One of the techniques that Jill and I use in editorial is that if we need to do reshoots, we make a little maquette or a little dummy scene, if you like. So what we do is we take pre-existing footage, say a shot of Ziedler and a shot of the Duke, and we freeze frame it, get a microphone, and, I very badly act out the soundtrack, if you like. The advantage of this is that when we go to shoot what we call the pickups, we don't need to build the whole set. What we can do is just build, this little section, say, behind me, and we shoot the actor going, oh, Ziedler, 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 and then you drop that little piece into the already cut existing scene. We call these maquettes. I hope you find them interesting.
Yes, the moon and the stars had conspired to bring us together. But the magic of the night had also cast its spell on the unsuspecting Duke.
The young writer's setting in faraway India is brilliant, and Satin, oh, she will be a star. But the conversion of the Moulin Rouge into a theatre will cost an extraordinary sum of money, Ziedler. I shall require some security. I shall require the deeds to the Moulin Rouge.
My dear Duke, there's no need for that. This is an agreement between gentlemen.
I'm not naive, Ziedler. I shall hold the deed to the Moulin Rouge. And if there's any shenanigans, my manservant, Warner, will deal with it in the only language you underworld folk understand.
Do I make myself clear?
As clear as crystal.
Now we have a clear understanding. It would appear that you have the means to transform your beloved Moulin
into a theatre!
I was wondering if you'd have time to look at the Will the Lovers Be Meeting at Their Usual Rendezvous Tonight scene. My dear, we've for the opera. I can assure you I will be giving the Lovers Will Be Meeting at Their Usual Rendezvous Tonight scene my utmost attention. Pertinence? Of course you will. Mademoiselle Satin, I must insist that you're more secure with your lines.
How dare you? How dare you suggest that I am not rehearsing my lines day and night? Call the time and I shall be there.
I'm sorry, Duke, we really can't make dinner once again. But my dear Duke, hope me be strong. I am your rock.
It's all we have to sell, don't give your love away.
I feel her affections are waning.
Impossible.
No, it's my fault. I'm too cold. I know, it's just that I have trouble saying it.
What?
The L word. Do you know? Love.
Duke, have no fear. It's what Satin's been waiting to hear from you.
Yes, but I can't find the right opportunity to tell her because she's out at day and night with that damned writer! No, that was wrong of me. I know how important her work is. It's just that there are limits! And if I don't see her tonight, I'm leaving, Ziedler, I'm leaving.
No, dear Duke. I'll insist Satin take the night off. We'll arrange a candlelit dinner for the two of you in the tower, and you can tell her exactly how you feel.
Yes. Good. Well, I'll go and inform her then now.
What the? Oh, my God.
Are you mad? Are you mad? Will the lovers be meeting at the Penniless Guitar Players' Garret tonight? Of course. Hindi courtesan!
Satin, I demand you cease work with the writer immediately and join the Duke for a very special supper tonight.
Ziedler, I wanted to tell her that.
Oh, sorry, Duke.
Satin. Oh, Duke, I'm so excited. 8 o'clock then? Don't be late. I'm counting the minutes.
Are you mad? That man holds the deeds to the Moulin Rouge. He's spending a fortune on you. He's making you a star, and all our dreams are coming true. And you're dallying with the writer? Oh, Charles, don't be ridiculous. I saw you together.
Well, it's just an infatuation. The infatuation will end forthwith. Charles, tell him it's over.
Baz and I started writing together probably from the day we met, but I can't remember the day we met because we were 5 and it was sort of in the dim, dark past. One of the things about Craig and I when we write is that because we're actors, there'll be endless footage of us, fooling around acting, but actually when we are privately alone, we write the drafts, we act it very seriously to each other. Not so much that our performances are that great, believe you me, they're not. But what we are doing is checking rhythm. I take you at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be you baptized, because I never will be Romeo.
You know, it was always Baz's original idea that there would be modern music in this period piece, and that was what he came to me with in the first instance, you know, based on the Orpheum myth set in and around the Moulin Rouge, somewhere around the turn of the century.
This story is about love.
For Christian, we decided he was a poet, and if he's the Orpheum character, he has to be the world's greatest poet, so beautiful that when he says his words, you know, the trees and the rocks follow him. So we were faced with this daunting prospect of, well, you know, how do you write that? How do you represent that? So we came up with this device, and that when Christian speaks his poetry, it's it's lyrics from really well-known, great songs of the 20th century.
We should be lovers.
We can't do that.
We should be lovers, and that's a fact.
Really, to decide something is great is a collective decision that people usually make a long time after the fact. I mean, a lot of people don't like Cubism, but when they see a painting by Picasso, they will go, well, that's by Picasso, he was a great painter.
What do you mean by that?
You know, just accept that when he says, all you need is love, it's the most incredible, amazing modern thing that these bohemians have ever heard. And they go, oh my God, that's so modern, it's genius.
Because I think Craig and I, as actors, we evolved this very natural gameplay. We sit there very meticulously at the famed charts, and we'd write down, improvise, discuss the scenes, write down each singular action point and little dialogue possibilities.
Have you been talking to that ridiculous brother of mine again? Flashback. An intense, corpulent, 50-ish gentleman, Uncle Lolo, presses his face close to Christian. Lolo's huge, wet, pink, fleshy, mustachioed lips excrete a single word coated in a thick layer of disgust.
Montmartre. Montmartre. Is Montmartre so bad? The boy inquires, trying not to sound too interested.
With salamander eyes, Lolo leans in to taste of Christian's undivided attention.
In the whole of the 1001 Night.
In the most shameful rituals of the Tantras.
In the Japanese brothel pictures.
In the vilest perversions of the Oriental mind, you couldn't find anything more nauseating.
It's what goes on there quite openly every day in this little village of sin
that sits atop a hill just outside the walls of Paris.
We then criticise the scenes, we'd improvise, act out the scenes more, quite seriously. Then I would give him my scene, he would give me his scene, I'd go away and redraft his scene, he mine.
But our friendship's always been about telling stories, you know, like making each other laugh, you know, who can be the most outrageous, the stupidest.
Because it's born of actually two friends playing, who have played since childhood, so to speak. And we now play for a living, and we play on paper. And it goes on paper and it becomes story.
Count Von Groovy was the original character that became, you know, the Duke, the kind of the baddie. But in early drafts, he was like a fabulous baddie. So like you meet him and he's like, you know, rich, suave, handsome, does things like, you know, takes Satin and Christian on ballooning trips to his, and they land, you know, in the middle of this dark forest, and there's this amazing Gothic chateau, and it's Count Von Groovy's, and Count Von Groovy's got this amazing library full of esoteric texts, and you know, and Count Von Groovy dabbles in the occult, and Count Von Groovy has these fabulous dinner parties with, you know, Oscar Wilde, Sarah Bernhardt, you know, and eventually Count Von Groovy not only seduces Satin but also Christian, and not only that, gets them both hooked on morphine, and so, you know, eventually you've got like Satin and Christian upstairs shooting up on morphine, being seduced by Prince Von Groovy, while downstairs, Oscar Wilde and Sarah Bernhardt are dancing the tango on the table, while Toulouse, after having too much absinthe and having lost his mind, is carving his face up with a razor blade in the mirror. The reason it got cut was it was a whole lot of different stories, you know, a whole lot of going down a whole lot of kind of avenues that weren't part of the main story, and ultimately became distractions. And what you do need is a rich guy who is the foil to Christian, and who is the the other part of the love triangle. You don't need all that other kind of stuff. It was just too much, and it took the story down different distracting avenues, which is always the journey of writing the screenplay. You kind of have an idea. You think, I want to be great if this character was this or that, or then that opens another Pandora's box, and then you go, oh, hang on. Well, no, actually, that we don't need all that. All we need is this line.
We have a dance. In the brothels of Buenos Aires. Tells the story. A prostitute. And a man who falls in love with her. First, there is desire. Then, passion. Then, suspicion. Jealousy, anger, betrayal. Where love is for the highest bidder, there can be no trust. Without trust, there is no love. Jealousy, yes, jealousy will drive you mad. Roxanne, you don't have to put on that red light. Walk the streets for money. You don't care if it's wrong or if it is right. Roxanne, you don't have to wear that dress tonight. Roxanne, you don't have to sell your body to the night.
His eyes upon your face, his hand upon your hand, his lips caress your skin. It's more than I can stand. Why does my heart cry? Feelings I can't fight. You're free to leave me, but just don't deceive me, and please believe me when I say I love you. Why does my heart cry? Feelings I can't fight. You're free to leave me, but just don't deceive me, and please believe me when I say I love you.
For an actor, if I'm doing a step, I will often say, this is a framework. This is the shape I want. Feel free to make it your own. It's got to sit on you. If they say, can I do this move or this suits me better, then I'll go with that. If I think it's okay, if I don't like it, I'll say so, but I'll say, no, I don't like that, but give me another one, and we'll fish for something that they feel comfortable with. Things only work when they look kind of organic. So, and actors are quite vocal about what they want and need. So, I mean, there are some moments when there's no option. If 100 people have to go to the right and step, I mean, they're just going to have to cut it. You know? Nicole had done some ballet as a young girl, but she wasn't a trained dancer by any means. But Nicole already came with some qualities that some dancers don't have. Like, she has innate presence and a certain sense of style and a certain look that is quite mesmerizing. She can walk into a room and take over. So that's half your battle anyway. A lot of dancers will have technique but won't have those qualities. And it's actually qualities that actually at auditions, it's qualities that people have that interest me more than technicians. She's already got that to start with. And I approach it the same way. We'll just try on steps. I say, I want something like this, and I'll show her, and she'll see, so that I don't feel comfortable. Should I do it on the left, or can I go something like here? He's the same that same actor approach. When we had our first workshop, I did a little routine for both of them. And Ewan was kind of marking what I would call, it wasn't quite there yet, but as soon as the camera appeared in a costume, it was like, oh, I get it. Showtime, and it was on. They were a bit of a giggle fest, the pair of them. I had to just throw them out of the room one day, tell them, just go away and giggle, get it out, and come back.
Like a virgin, your heartbeat.
His job in Like a Virgin, he's got to sell it. He's kind of convinced the Duke to go this way, and then 12 guys come in as the backup sort of guy to reiterate that. So they're kind of doing all the double pirouettes and the leg kicks, kick lines, and he's doing all the focused acting stuff. And I mean, he's sitting on a trolley with a tea towel over his head, looking like a virgin. It's got lots of old cliches, but it's kind of a fun number. I mean, that was a fun number to do.
First, there is desire.
We had to create a tango that is actually a recognizable dance, but also at the same time try and relate that movement-wise to the story. The tango was a mixture of, there are some actually authentic steps that would have been used at the turn of the century in Buenos Aires, particularly that initial circling around movement. Same with the initial crisscross steps that you do. Once the partnership between Caroline and Jacek had split up, we're into another part of the story where she would go with any guy around. So that's when all the 6 boys came around and circled Caroline.
And he said, Caroline, I just want you to throw yourself at all the men, and I want them to grab you and push you around. And it was so exciting because it was so real.
That's one of the best periods for me as a choreographer as well, because you don't know where you're going to go yet. And out of there, we did a couple of mornings of improvisations, and I just selected things and modified them that I thought would be, work really well in terms of the storytelling. The can-can is such a known dance, but I didn't approach it from the idea of doing steps. I approached it first from the idea of what about if the girls came out and it was more like they were having a battle, a bit like 2 groups of warring gangs.
It's not like a can-can that you've seen in the past, which is lovely dancing and everybody squealing, and this is more like a battlefield. It's like we call it a cockfight.
So I started out from that scenario, which then now breaks into the girls going out into the floor to corral the men into position. It kind of has the dynamic of a big impact of, say, 25 dancers going really fast and full out. But I tried to make it a bit looser in the sense that it wasn't a structured can-can.
And every time we did the can-can, the response from people like the crew, you know, if you please the crew, then you know you're doing well. And also, you know, everybody in it would just be, the adrenaline would be pumping so much. That I found wonderful to do, because it wasn't just dancing, there was a reason for it. And it just made it, the steps sort of so special, because it wasn't just, oh, I can do this and I can do that. It's like, yeah, come on, compete with me, I dare you.
Well, there aren't many films that have this much sort of movement for work for choreographers to do, you know. So I was very keen to, like, this is like the third one. It was kind of like a rounding off, or I was very keen to do something big.
दिला दो बंगला दिला दो गाड़ी दीवानी साथ तो आ दिला दो बंगला दिला दो गाड़ी दीवानी साथ तो आ चम्मा चम्मा बाजे तेरी पैजनिया
We have a dance in the brothels of Buenos Aires. It tells the story of the prostitute and the man who falls in love with. First, there is desire. Then, passion. Then, suspicion. Jealousy, anger, betrayal. When love is for the highest bidder, there is no trust. Without trust, there is no love. And jealousy, yes, jealousy, will drive you.
Made it through. She didn't know how lost she was until she found you. She was feeling incomplete. She'd been had. She was sad and blue. Thought you made her feel. Yes, you made. Like a virgin, touch the very first time. Like a virgin, when your heart's beat, don't in time. Give you all her love.
makes me strong. Yes, she makes me bold. Oh, her love thawed out. Yes, her love thawed out. What was scared and
as the choreographer, I wanted to thank this wonderful bunch of dancers for giving me the best time in this rehearsal space, and my two assistants. Paul and Esther from the dance department.
We've actually just landed. We've been sitting on the tarmac in Edinburgh for a while. It's 2 o'clock. We're travelling by car now to Glasgow.
We went to work with Craig Armstrong in his studio in Glasgow, one of our dear friends and collaborators. It was a really special time for us because we managed to really enjoy the creation of the music for the film.
I feel my job with ours is to write really beautiful themes for the movie.
He said, well, you know, I'll come to Glasgow. I went, really? You know, so he came here, you know, and he absolutely loved it. And I think part of the reason he loved it, you know, I shouldn't really say this, is that, you know, I think a lot of the studio people just couldn't get hold of him. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people didn't even know where Glasgow was, you know, over in LA, but he actually really enjoyed his experience here. And it was funny because at Christmas it was snowing everywhere, you know, and there were like kids playing in the snow sometimes, you know. For Australians to be in the snow is a bit weird. It seems so obvious to say, but I mean, most musicals, it has original songs. This obviously doesn't, and the lyrics and the songs are part of the story of the film, if you see what I mean.
And this one's for you, and you can tell everybody that this is your song.
I mean, so it's completely seamless. It's not as if the music's separate in any way. The actual story, in a way, is constructed around the choice of songs. There's like any movie, there's a structural thing you have to do to organise it. And then, of course, you've got to completely forget that, because to write a piece of music that's beautiful and true, you know, who knows where that comes from. Not only will the music serve the film, the music is also, you know, it can work on its own. And I think that's really important for Baz's films, because it's so strong, you know, because visually it's just so strong that there has to be something really strong to balance it. I mean, you couldn't do anything very underscorey and kind of just sort of underpin it. You've really got to put something really strong musically beside it, because, you know, his work is just so powerful, you know. But there was one piece in particular that really became really special, and it's a song called Nature Boy. I was playing around with Nature Boy, and Baz loves Nature Boy too, and it's a very, very interesting, opaque kind of piece of music. And the more we worked on it, the more that song, in a way, became, you know, Ewan's theme, in a sense. But, you know, it was really amazing to be involved in the death scene in this film, because Baz's death scenes, you know, are like 20 minutes long. I don't know if have you seen Romeo and Juliet? The camera pulls up, goes right through the Moulin Rouge, right up to the rooftops of Paris, you know, and then the last version of Nature Boy comes in, and it is very beautiful, and you know, it's hard writing, you know, music that you know, it's an emotional challenge writing to a Baz film, because, you know, it takes you through all these, you know, when you write to those scenes, I mean, you have to go through it. You know, it's a brave film to make, you know, and when so many people aren't really making brave movies, you know, I think, you know, it's great that he keeps on wanting to challenge himself, and by doing that, whoever works with him, and I'm just one of the people who work with him, it challenges you. You know, and it's not uplifting in any, you know, with any like small emotion. You know, it's big movie, big emotions.
The only problem was I kept hearing my father's voice in my head.
You end up wasting your life at the Moulin Rouge with a can-can dancer.
I can't write the show for the Moulin Rouge.
Why not?
So this should actually be more like a nightmare, right? A Bernard Herrmann nightmare, that bite. Instead of having one composer, which is very traditional, we had one key composer, which was Craig Armstrong, and he did all the emotional journey of the film. But as well as that, we had brilliant contributions from Chris Elliott, who did the sort of witty comedy music.
Yes. Freedom. Yes, of course.
Love. Yeah, that's it, that's it. Yeah, play it again. Do the picture, ready? Wait for it. Now, but this is... yeah. Josh Abrams was really a partner of Ant and I when we were making Sunscreen.
He joined the process earlier than anybody else other than myself in terms of becoming involved musically in mapping out what was the musical script for this film Moulin Rouge.
The role of musical director, which Maurice de Vries took, was possibly on this project the most complicated musical direction one could find oneself doing, because not only was he, you know, he was working in the early stages, drafting structure for music ideas, he certainly contributed on a producerial level with getting all the vocals, which was in itself an extraordinary achievement.
The Red Room was Maurice's room, with a microphone in it and a sofa and windows out to the outside world, and that's where we recorded all the songs for the film.
It's not really possible, I think, to underline the whole thing and say the music will be in such and such a style. I mean, there's rock, there's opera.
The show must go on.
There's hip-hop. There's dance music, there's old MGM-style musical numbers. There's, yeah, you name it, it's there.
'Cause we are living in a material world, and I am a material girl. 'Cause we are living in a material world, and I am a material girl. Sorrow fills that spray. Fast.
Get wild!
I mean, some of the song titles that appear in the movie are just referenced as song titles, and Christian will sit down and when he's asked what he thinks about love, his response off the cuff and as dialogue is,
A life without love, that's terrible.
No, being on the street, that's terrible.
No, love is like oxygen. What? Love is a many splendid thing, love.
this project couldn't work, however great the songs were, unless every song that was there was there for the primary reason of continuing to tell the story that the film is telling.
And cut.
Right there.
Baz, one phone call from Baz and I'd pretty much heard the whole film.
You know, several phone calls, dialogue.
He said, I've got a load of people dancing to the can-can.
Because we can! After much dialogue, we actually went into Norman's studio, and Norman works on, and he's quite well known for this, it's like an Atari. Now, to me, I don't know anything about computers, really, but it was like having a favourite old piano or a very old instrument, you know, and I thought it was an amazing and wonderful moment we live in where, like electronic music, you have these, you know, you have your favourite old instrument and you don't throw it away because it's got the right sound.
And down here you see all the numbers, that's the time code. And then a lead comes out the back of the television, goes into here, which then goes into my computer, which drives all the samples which were played on this keyboard.
How old is the computer?
This computer, I think it's about 15 years old. It's gathering dust. No, it's the first one I ever got and the only one that I know how to work properly. My music is basically a kind of a collage of tiny little samples. There's some instruments, but lots of just tiny little loops and things from, you know, sort of 30 different loops coming from different records. The hedonistic scene at the Moulin Rouge is kind of the same as Manumission in Ibiza. The same kind of wild camp abandon. And because I DJ there, he just said try and make them dance to what they'd be dancing to if it was Manumission rather than the Moulin Rouge. Because I wanted to do something really hardcore techno, but it just didn't fit the amount of shouting and laughter and everything. You couldn't go kind of minimal on it. So it had to be something big and brash and as bold as the dancing. The one thing I never could understand about the can-can was it's supposed to be really salacious and sexy. And I find that kind of dancing impressive, but not especially sexy. You know, this kind of, they've got far too many skirts on, you know. I thought one very small skirt would be sexy. 35 really big skirts doesn't do it for me. Baz tends to have juxtapositions with the music, like rather than just, you know, getting somebody to score it and write all these songs like, you know, The Sound of Music. He kind of, you know, updates old songs or downdates new songs, you know. That's one of the things was, you know, doing modern pop songs in a very old romantic way. And doing sort of bringing old songs up to date using samplers. I think it works. I think Baz's idea that kind of wild, hedonistic abandon and glamour are kind of timeless, and people are still doing, you know, the dance routines have changed, but people are still doing pretty much the same things in nightclubs, drinking a lot and fondling women. So I think there's something like that kind of hedonistic attitude is probably timeless.
Baz is always focused when we're working together on the design on serving the story. That is his primary goal, and every element of the design must serve ultimately the comprehension of the message that is being described in the words by the actors on the screen.
One of the things we could really advance is the tower.
Baz had a couple of rules that he wanted us to explore. He didn't want just a carbon copy, a historical carbon copy of the Moulin Rouge. He really wanted to get a contemporary audience to understand how it would have felt to be in the late 19th century in this amazing electrified place, and that whatever devices or interpretations of the Moulin Rouge that we would use would help an audience to access that. Baz had coined a phrase which was instead of artificial reality, real artificiality, because the conceit is completely artificial. Like, people standing up and breaking out into song is not reality. And he wanted a world in which it was completely that the audience would feel that it was feasible for these things to happen. So it's a place definitely based on 19th century Paris, and we tried to follow this rule, which was that you could use any element that was available in 1890. So you could use leather, or you could use rubber, or you could use whatever we felt was available or knew from research was available at that time. But we were able to use it out of context. Baz talked about looking backwards to classical iconic film heroines like Marlene Dietrich, like Greta Garbo, and we started to pull out what we felt were characteristic of all those heroines. And so we started to develop that feeling for Satine. When you look at the red dress that she wears when she says, "How do I look?" or going up the elephant.
How do I look?
It's very much a nod to Gilda. When you see her coming down in the Black Diamonds costume, it's a nod to the bus stop costume worn by Marilyn Monroe. I mean, Ewan and Nicole were very interesting, and Angus and I spent months and months pondering them. With Nicole, we went on a very long journey, and I think Baz was talking about all the time about what her character was. But just for our movie, it was hard to find exactly the right timber for all her clothing. So Angus and I kind of worked on it, and Baz was obviously incredibly exacting about how he saw Nicole being this iconic figure. So her costumes underwent several revolutions throughout the process. The quintessential penniless poet, what does he wear? Ewan's an incredibly attractive man, and we wanted him to look handsome and credible and kind of not fusty and old-fashioned. We didn't want the fact that the clothes possibly had a certain formality, like men wore waistcoats, to kind of put a barrier between you and the audience. So that was sort of where we started from him, that there had to be a kind of a sense of reality. Baz said, you know, he's got to be really credible. He is an unartificial character. He's the voice of the story. You have to believe what he's saying. The Can-Can girls. They're not strictly Can-Can girls of the historical period, but what we were trying to do, we've sort of based them all on kind of sexual iconography to try and make clear to the audience that the Can-Can girls all had character names in the Moulin Rouge, and also that the dance was extremely sexy. It was very daring, because it doesn't happen in our film, but in reality, people either wore no underpants or split underpants. So it was very lewd, and we had to transmute that, which was not acceptable to our audience today, to, we called it a world of entertainment under every dress. So we had to find a way of making the knickers, or getting a glimpse of the knickers, exciting. So Angus and I toyed around with the idea of having the underpants as a sort of coloured centre to a flower, and we developed coloured petticoats rather than white petticoats, even though the common thing was white petticoats, so that people understand the excitement that the 19th century audience had when they lifted their dresses. I think we've made 300 costumes from scratch. We started off, in this giant space with one horrible old sewing machine and one cutter, and then the next time you look down, there was just like 80 people going hell for leather. We had a millinery department that made, I think about 200 hats, and on top of that we have rented a whole heap of extras wardrobe. We made the entire facade of the dance hall of the Moulin Rouge in real scale. The garden took about 8 weeks to build. The street took about the same amount of time. We'd go to the auctions every week to buy bentwood chairs because we needed hundreds and hundreds of bentwood chairs for the Moulin Rouge, because Bridget Brosh, the decorator, absolutely wanted some new ones, some old ones, some repaired ones. So the Moulin Rouge had a sense of history and grittiness. And the scale of Moulin Rouge was the daunting thing, and being able to deliver the denseness that was required was very difficult. I mean, I remember, I don't know, some maybe 6 or 8 months ago seeing Moulin Rouge, and it wasn't finished and it was still a bit messy. But I remember sitting down in a screening room and thinking, I haven't wasted 4 years of my life. I am so happy I made this movie. I'm interested in seeing where we're going to go next.
It was about creating the world of the Moulin Rouge, and the world that Baz wanted it to be, not the one that's expected by, you know, past Moulin Rouge films or, you know, that sort of thing. I think sort of the day that came that we thought, oh, maybe we're not doing quite such a period thing, is when we decided that, you know, one of Nicole's skirts would be made out of leather. It was from that time on that we thought, oh, it still works. It still works in the parameters of our movie. The period police are going to have to kill us. We're just doing it. What is Satine? You know, who does she relate to? Is she Madonna? Is she Greta Garbo? Is she Betty Grable? And trying to find a key into that. She was a star and was more or less constantly performing. So every one of her clothes was a character costume for her, in a sense. We early on decided that each of the girls should be individuals, because they were stars of the Moulin Rouge at the time. There were some that were more famous than others. And so from there we went into looking at different characters for each of the girls, based on, at that time, either a sexual fetish or a theatrical type. So we had a dominatrix can-can girl, we had a schoolgirl can-can girl, and then we had more theatrical types like harlequins and clowns and so forth. He's comparing the Moulin Rouge to a club, to like a disco of now, or a nightclub of now, where ordinary people get to be extraordinary in terms of who they are in this environment. Now, whether that's the environment of then where you drank absinthe and, you know, fell apart, or now where people take drugs and drink alcohol and go mad. You know, we had 8 cutters. They had several sewers each. I think certainly on our big days we're up to about 75, 80 people in terms of dressers and maintenance people. Yeah.
To create the introduction to Paris scene, we had to use a whole collage of techniques to bring it together, which provided the Animalogic team both a great creative and technical challenge to complete. Siam took us through her production book, which basically gave us great insight into all the images her design team had created, all the fantastic costumes, all those Photoshop collages which basically mapped out the entire movie. We went through a lot of tests to try and describe that journey through travelling from the wide vista of Paris through this archive world. And we wanted to sort of somehow suggest what the population was like, what the culture was like in Paris at that time. You know, it was filled with brothels, prostitutes, you know, divey kind of cabaret bars, and all sorts of sex, drugs and rock and roll, I guess, was happening there at the time. Paris at the turn of the 19th century was the Bangkok of today.
The process of building the 3D Paris was it came from a couple of different places. We basically had 3D modelers working on building really simplistic models, and then using a lot of displacement to sort of create the detail that was needed on the buildings, as well as R&D who helped us out with a procedural Paris building plugin where we were able to take a map of Paris, say, and outline all the streets and areas we wanted, and then using this plugin we were able to generate a city.
It took a set of textures for walls and roofs and little models of chimney pots and things like that, and basically picked different kinds of random combinations of those things to make lots of buildings.
It's a bit like a pop-up book for children. When you open, you have different flats who come toward you. So, of course, the problem of this shot is to match 2D, 3D, and motion control on model and live action.
To add a little bit extra to the imagery, we sort of did a few things. Like one of our sections in our library was roof junk. We did put a lot of stuff around, like broken bottles, broken chairs and things left on roofs from bohemian parties and things like that.
We spent quite a lot of time trying to decide what the gates of Mama were going to look like. Gilded around that face were all these strange Gothic sculptures of kind of faces and bodies sort of kind of hanging off, almost Gaudi-esque sculptured cave-like kind of stalactites. Baz and Sam wanted to make a reference back to that time, so they thought it was important that we used and took that facade that's on the club Inferno, L'Enfer.
Our role in doing this was not only as 3D artists, but was to be, sort of detectives in going through all the old photographs and whatnot and finding out what would make it look like the turn of the century Paris. That was sort of part of the enjoyment of the job, really immersing yourself in all of the old images and trying to bring that to life in our 3D scenes.
Originally Baz was really excited by just some previews that we showed him, which was really rough, of just applying a technique to the video, making it look like old film. It became a narrative point that the old grungy black and white was when Christian was sad.
The thing that we all took away was how theatrical you can make all of this look. I think we're so used to trying to make it all look so real that this was a pleasant challenge.
Turn away from these villagers.
Sad of eye, but very wise was he.
The bad Green Fairy was like a like a male pop star. The references CM and Baz mentioned were things like Iggy Pop and even Marilyn Manson, and these are all directions they were looking at exploring. What came out of the meeting though was, we should really get Kylie Minogue for this. We should really get Kylie Minogue for this. Kylie Minogue will be great, and from there the whole concept of having this kind of evil rocker fairy, sort of dwindled away and eventually never came to be.
I am the Green Fairy.
The Green Fairy was always supposed to be a vision. She was a hallucination, and it was really important that she had a hallucinogenic quality, and there's all kinds of ways you can go with that idea, but it was also really important that she was located within the image system that Baz had constructed for the film.
Ratter-tatter-tatter and up.
When we were doing the harness test, we decided how she should maybe fly around the room, and we shot Serena in the harness flying in the ways that we thought she would need to fly, and gave it to Baz. He knew it was going to work and that we could shoot Kylie in the harness and she would look like she was really flying. All of a sudden it was the day to shoot Kylie.
Really, Charles, what should happen is men should be there, back to us, and go alive.
Baz's storyboards were great because they gave us a really good idea of the character of the fairy and how cheeky and energetic she was going to be.
For the wing design for the Green Fairy sequence, what we started looking at initially was things like hummingbirds, dragonflies, bumblebees. It didn't take us long to work out that, in fact, the movement and the look of the wings were quite integrated together. Things like looking at the wings in a static position, their reflectivity and transparency was very, very different than when they were in a fast beating motion in changing lighting conditions.
Okay, making Kylie sparkle. That was, she had a really fabulous costume on already, which is really sparkly. You have to have particles. If you're going to be a fairy, you have to have lots of particles around you. But they needed to be particles that had a handcrafted quality. It was really important that the imagery looked like it had been created with steam-age technology rather than digital technology. And so we really tried to make things look like they were actually made on an optical printer, that they were double exposed, that they had blurry edges. We also had to grade her and make her green. There are lots of different greens that she could be. It's funny, you just change the green a tiny bit and suddenly everyone was going, oh no, that looks really antiseptic. And then you change it back and people saying she looks too pea green. It was very entertaining trying to find the right green, that's for sure.
It was a hell of a lot of work to do for Green Fairy. 30 shots is a lot to do in a hurry. Some of the sequences were 7 frames long. Some of the sequences, I think the longest is about 311. Baz was so particular about what he wanted in like those 7 frames. I think we spent longer on them than we did on the 300 frame shot. He knew everything specifically that was going to happen over those 7 frames and we had to get it right.
The Green Fairy, once she's actually kind of got the attention of the bohos and seduced them, she shows her true evil side.
You are evil!
We made her eyes red. I think she looks pretty evil.